ng puso ko. Ating matahimik.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Melissa Rambuanga, the Conference Chair of akoparasabata 2021. I'm your pre-webinar host, sharing updates, reminders, and announcements. Before we officially start Webinar 3, we request everyone to stand up from wherever you are, stretch a bit, and follow the steps to the akoparasabata 2021 Dance Challenge. I'll demonstrate the basic steps to our call sign, so please follow me. Ako, tayo, para, sa bata. Again, ako, tayo, para, sa bata. Game, let's do it together. Thank you very much for participating. And now, may I turn you over to the moderator of Ako Para sa Bata Webinar 3, Bridging Gaps in Mental Health. She is a psychologist at the Child Protection Unit, Philippine General Hospital, and a consultant at the City Social Welfare and Development Office of the City Government of Valenzuela. A certified specialist in assessment psychology and certified specialist in clinical psychology of the Psychological Association of the Philippines, a diplomate of the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress, a member of the American Psychological Association, Society of Clinical Psychology, Division 12, and member of the National Center for Crisis Management. Everyone, let us welcome Ms. Fritzy Cristina B. Diaz. Ms. Fritz?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mel. Okay, so hello everyone. Okay, so welcome again to the Ako Para sa Bata. This is webinar 3 titled Bridging Gaps in Mental Health. So, we have been in this pandemic situation for so long. So this webinar aims to address discussing the gaps and implications of the pandemic on the delivery of specific mental health interventions. Specifically, this webinar aims to first compare different challenges and opportunities in the way that mental health therapies are delivered from before the pandemic to the new normal. So we will try to, through our speakers, we will try to see what are their suggestions with regards to the transition. And also, we are very much pleased that we are able to invite speakers who can describe how art and music therapy can be adapted virtually and maximize the use of different platforms to deliver both therapies. Okay? And then lastly, this webinar aims to identify other associated virtual therapy tools and specific considerations for video therapy adaptations. Okay, so that would be for our webinar. We have 4 resource persons, each discussing how we can bridge gaps in mental health. Okay, so our very own Dr. Balderrama will provide a situationer. Then Dr. Brillantes Evangelista will discuss focusing-oriented expressive arts usage and telepsychotherapy for children amidst the pandemic. And lastly, Mr. Kalugdan and Mrs. Zamar Alcantara will present music therapy. I'm going to introduce you now. I'm very much honored. This is an opportunity to introduce to our first resource person. She is the head of the Mental Health and Wellness Services of the Child Protection Unit, Philippine General Hospital. She's also an associate professor of the UP College of Medicine, a professorial lecturer of the Philippine Judicial Academy. She's a life member fellow of the Philippine Psychiatric Association, a diplomate of the Philippine Board of Psychiatry, and a fellow of the Philippine Society of Child and Adolescent Psychiatrists. Okay, so that's a lot, right? She received her training in forensic psychiatry at the University of London under Shivning Scholarship. She has 25 years of experience in working with abused children. So to present the current situation of mental health amidst this pandemic, let us give a warm welcome to Norieta C. Balderrama, MD, FPPA, FPCA, PPI. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Fritz, for the very kind introduction. Okay, so a pleasant good morning to everyone, to our viewers. So I hope everyone is healthy, safe, and that you will have fun. Okay, so my topic is just a short situationer about mental health. Okay, so the objectives for this short lecture is to just review findings on mental health concerns of abused children and discuss mental health interventions for abused children and their families and check what we are doing now. Okay, so my first slide is about public health crisis. We know that child abuse is really topmost in terms of priority. And we all know, according to WHO, that children exposed to an abusive environment are more likely to acquire chronic mental health problems such as bipolar disorder, anxiety, borderline personality disorder, depression, and grief. At the Child Protection Unit, the highest would usually be major depressive disorder and PTSD. And we can also see that there is a correlation between child abuse to poor performance in school and overall abuse of drugs and sexual intercourse. And it is also important for us to take note that even before the pandemic, we already have about 10 to 20% of children and adolescents affected by mental health problems. And we also know that mental disorders rank as the leading cause of disability adjusted life years among children, and prevalence of suicide attempts is very high. And we can see this also in during the pandemic, that we can see a lot of children's with suicidal ideations. Okay. And of course, in the Philippines, it's important to mention also that we have a Mental Health Act, which was passed in 2019. And of course, the implementation was hampered by the pandemic. And supposedly, we have more services in each of the regions and hospitals. So basically, this Mental Health Act is patient rights based, and also there is supposedly an increase. All hospitals are required to have mental health services. And you can already see here, very few hospitals actually have psychiatric facilities. Only 5 government hospitals have psychiatric facilities for children. There's a lot of hospitals with psychiatric units, 84, but very few for child patients. And we have 46 outpatient facilities and only 2 mental health professionals per 100,000 people. So that's really very small. And according to the Philippine National Baseline Study on Violence Against Children in 2015, we have a lot of cases. No? So you have physical violence, 64.2%, you have psychological, 61.5%, sexual, 22.4%, peer-related problems, 65%. And this is due to also issues related to bullying and, of course, corporal punishment at home. And we also see a lot of sexual exploitation and trafficking. And so in general, if you look at this data, 2 in 3 experience physical violence among children, 1 in 4 experience sexual violence, and 2 in 5 experience psychological violence, and 2 and 3 experience peer violence. And that's a lot looking at these numbers. So during the pandemic, the threat, in addition to what we have seen already, an increase in terms of online child abuse, online sexual solicitation and grooming. That is also what we need to be aware of, because children, even before the pandemic and during the pandemic, are coerced to do live streaming of sexual acts. And so, what happened during the pandemic is that our lives have been disrupted, and children, no, including children, families, there is lockdown, and a lot of the children stay home. And this can actually be one of the factors that increases the stress among children because they're used to going out, and suddenly they're all cooped up inside their homes. And of course, the situation is even intensified because of the economic problems brought about by the pandemic. And so, poverty is another issue that we have to contend with. So, there is a strong link between poverty and exploitation. We all know that, especially the cases that we see online, that sometimes the parents or even relatives, no, are actually part of the exploitation. And of course, as we've said, the lockdown made children more vulnerable to violence. And this is reported by the Office of the Cybercrime, where you have 260% increase in cyber sex offenses, online sexual exploitation, and abuse of children. Okay, and we have 1.8 billion children living in 104 countries, including our country, who are at risk due to disrupted violence prevention and response services. So we know that a lot of children couldn't access services. Unlike before, they could go out, they could go to their teacher, school, or other services. Because of the lockdown, we have disrupted prevention and response services. And we hope the Universal Healthcare, the Philippines, will provide service coverage to access mental health services and rehabilitation. But we know it is still not fully implemented. And it is important for us to think as practitioners in this field to look at preventive, curative, and rehabilitative care that we should provide so that we will decrease the number of mental health problems and therefore help children, no, in general. Now, it is also important that the Mental Health Action Plan of WHO says that it is important for mental health promotion, especially during early stages. And we all know that trauma lives in the body, and if these children do have traumatic experiences, it is additive. And it is important for everybody to have mental health education programs in the curriculum, and the students focusing on their coping skills, and teachers in terms of their knowledge of mental illness and how to provide support for children, like maybe psychosocial processing or maybe PFA in the beginning, and how to educate children about their mental health. And we all know a big gap is really the limited medical and psychological care available in the Philippines. So let's look at WCPUs. So at the different WCPUs, more than 100 in 55 provinces, we have, of course, some are lucky that they have psychologists or psychiatrists, but a lot of the WCPUs do not have mental health practitioners. So some of the things that we are doing, we of course have the MAPA, the parenting modules that was modified to suit the present condition during the pandemic online. And we have been doing trauma-informed care for so many years already. I think almost 10 years already, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, we have the online training for child protection specialists. We have the trauma-informed care. We have PFA. We have psychoeducation and coping. And of course, in addition to that, during our sessions, we do and we use different modes of therapy or interventions. So, of course, we have the EMDR for children and their families or the parents. We do play therapy, art therapy, of course, medication, CBT, TFCBT, group therapies, family therapy, parent-child interaction therapy, parent-focused intervention, depending on their conditions, okay? So it is important for us to also look at what we have done in order to augment the low number of mental health practitioners in the Philippines. So we have already trained more than 70 social workers and psychologists. We call it trauma-informed psychosocial processing, which is based on CBT also. And the parts are psychoeducation, coping, relaxation, the trauma narrative, trauma reminders, safety, no, at the end of the sessions. And we usually do this for at least 8 sessions or more. And this was developed by CPN and Azusa Pacific University. So we're happy that we're able to train social workers so that they could help children. And I have seen during the pandemic that they have difficulty going out, right? But if you have one T practitioner inside the facility, then it's going to be very helpful for the children. So they can proceed with the therapy because, as you know, children have difficulty or are not allowed to go out. So part of course, mental health will not be complete without talking about resilience. No? At the end of the spectrum of all the interventions, we also have to consider resilience. So when we talk about trauma-informed care, we talk about hope, healing, resilience, and recovery. So as a way of ending my short lecture, I would just like to say that we have to promote resilience and recovery. And the 3 areas would be promoting the development and maintenance of positive attachments. Kailangan you all have BFFs, no? Best friend forever. The children will have relationships, good relationships with their families and friends, and providing enrichment opportunities and child and parent focused clinical interventions. So just to sum up, attachment, we all know that this promotes resilience among maltreated children, and this is evidence-based that it decreases the risk for development of depressive disorders. It minimizes the hypothalamic or HPA axis, stress axis. It ameliorates negative effects of genes associated with the risk for psychopathology and reduces the negative impact of abuse and neglect on brain structure and function. So isn't that wonderful to have attachments? It actually helps the brain. And second, enrichment, these are the activities. So you all do this. Before, we used to have summer camps. One time we had the summer camp with Fritz and Jason with families, no, of child protection unit clients. No? So you can also have music lessons, sports, arts. No? All of these are part of the enrichment because they provide positive self-esteem and establish support relationships. And of course, the relationship with coaches and other adults as meaningful. And they become their significant, no, persons in their lives. And data supports exercise and music training, also promotes positive brain changes via neuroplasticity. And lastly, of course, child and parent clinical interventions. Trauma-informed systems of care is very important to foster resiliency, and that TFCBT is has the strongest evidence for treatment of PTSD and other trauma-related psychopathologies in children. So it is important for us to provide trauma-informed care involving parents, and that it is important to continue the care and recovery of children with their parents or caregivers. So now during the pandemic at the CPU, we've been using telehubs in different selected areas and online consultation in addition to the face-to-face consultation, assessment by different mental health practitioners. And we, of course, want to focus on early interventions, family-focused services, and also we want to use, of course, media to educate people, the groups in the community, and if it is safe, of course, in the future, home visits. And my last statement is that it is really important for all of us to have a multidisciplinary team, no? Together, all of you here during this webinar with research, we could help improve the mental health of abused children. So with that, thank you very much for your kind attention. And again, a pleasant good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Balderrama. We can actually say that even before this pandemic, that there is a shortage of mental health practitioner amidst the needs, various mental health needs. And based on Dr. Nor's presentation, there's also a change in the paradigm of how abuse have been taking place, which is actually now online. Now, to the chat at the basic of at the bottom of it, I think the challenge is really to deliver the mental health services far and wide without the individuals leaving their homes. And to further elucidate that, we will proceed with our second resource speaker. Our next resource person is a clinical psychologist, a professor and chair of the Department of Psychology in Miriam College. She's a certified focusing-oriented expressive arts practitioner and trainer, and a faculty at the Focusing and Expressive Arts Institute to discuss focusing-oriented expressive arts. Okay, that's a lot. Usage in telepsychotherapy for children amidst the pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, let us hear from Grace Brillantes Evangelista, PhD, RSI CSCLP. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzy, for that generous introduction. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. This is Focusing-Oriented Expressive Arts. Sabi nga ni Ms. Fritzy, a mouthful. So vote na lang para mas mabilis. Usage in telepsychotherapy for children amidst the pandemic. So I will just be giving you a brief introduction to FOAT, or Focusing-Oriented Expressive Arts, and its usage to telepsychotherapy, in telepsychotherapy. So for today, just giving you, I hope to provide with you some understanding about FOAT, maybe a brief experience of attunement and a tool in FOAT, maybe explore its usage in telesessions. And I also hope to share with you some of the key considerations I use in telepsychotherapy practice, especially at this time of the pandemic. So, but maybe let's begin with setting the context and the use of arts for well-being and mental health. Here, we underscore the intentional use of the arts to facilitate expression and creation towards manifesting well-being and mental health. Using language and imageries and different modalities of arts, we explore and make sense of our experiences and eventually create a narrative and direction that allow us to cultivate healing, sabi nga ni Doc Nori kanina, resilience, recovery, and transformation. And of course, a healthier life narrative ahead. When we talk about the arts in psychotherapy or psychosocial engagement, we tap into its elements. I will not discuss each of these elements, but it suffices to know that these elements become part of the therapeutic processes. And when we say we are using the arts for well-being and psychotherapy, we go through the expressive and creative processes. And it's not so much about the final output, but our connection to the art making and how it taps into our self-understanding and our agency for meaning making and to cultivate our well-being and mental health. In the process of psychotherapy, for instance, the therapist carefully guides the clients into expressing their thoughts and feelings through certain art modalities that resonate with them, especially with the children. The arts then serve as a handle to work through the difficult emotions or issues of the clients. Now, because children may have more difficulty in verbal expressing, or verbally expressing their thoughts and feelings, the arts, especially the images, serve as their medium of expression, allowing the therapist or facilitator to gain insights into the inner landscape of the child. There are several models and approaches in the use of arts in psychotherapy. But for this presentation, I will be sharing with you one of the models in theory and practice in expressive arts therapy. the focusing-oriented expressive arts, or originally called as focusing-oriented art therapy by Dr. Laurie Rappaport, is a mindfulness-based approach integrating the focusing-oriented psychotherapy developed by Eugene Genlin from his research with Carl Rogers in what made therapy work. No, there was a research there, and one of the findings was that the ability of the client to draw inward, no, some insights and really sense what's in there. So thus the word focusing. And combining this one with the expressive arts, Dr. Laurie Rappaport developed the photo. We have here some books. These are some of the books, the main references of the focusing-oriented psychotherapy and focusing, written by Dr. Eugene Genlin, and the focusing-oriented art therapy and mindfulness and arts therapies by Dr. Laurie Rappaport. You may want to also check the websites indicated here for the International Focusing Institute and the Focusing and Expressive Arts Institute. In the websites, you will find many resources that can be helpful in your practice, including full access to researches and other publications, and maybe for training details should you be interested. So, because it's an entire paradigm and it took me so many years to learn FODE, I'll just be giving you some of the basic foundations and principles that may be helpful in the telepsychotherapy or telesessions that we are doing. So some of the key principles of FODE that serve as guides for the practitioners or the therapist are here, the following. These are also important handles that we can use in our telepsych or telesessions. So I will be using words client, child, children interchangeably. So let's begin with presence. I think we're all familiar with the word, but it gives a different, may buzzword din ngayon, no? Yung mindfulness. No? And it's really that, no? That kind of a mindfulness, that kind of a presencing in the here and now, that we are not, sabi nga kanina, no? If we can focus, sabi ni Dr. Melissa kanina, if we can focus and not do multitasking, so that we can be fully present, especially in the telesession when we have limited cues with our clients. No? So it's very important that we actually are fully present with the client. What I do is actually like really sensing as if we are in the same space, so that there may be some cues that I would need to be mindful of, so that we can go through the process in a way that is healthy and appropriate for the child or the client. So in the presence, the compassionate, attentive listening is actually very much important. So our ability to listen both in the verbal, the tones, the nonverbal cues. And presence is also encouraged in the session for the child or the children to be more engaged and attuned. So we provide orientation and some grounding exercises like, okay, let's start with some breathing, sensing our body, feeling the support of the ground beneath us. So hayaan lang, no, na mas maging nandito sila kung nasaan sila, and they're not distracted with the virtual platform. So we follow the attention of the child or the children through verbal and nonverbal responses, and remind them to be present when their attention is going somewhere else. Of course, no, the second one is not really the second one, but the next is safety comes first. Actually, first and foremost, as we said, especially when we're dealing with children with history of trauma or abuse, no, it is important to ensure that the child feels safe. No? We always begin with ensuring their sense of safety. And in any therapy naman, yun talaga yung unang-una, di ba? The safety of the client that we are working with. So no amount of strategies unless the child or the client feels safe, the therapy will actually work. No? So this includes the safety of the physical and the virtual space where the child is, and the safety of the conversation of the activities. Now, there is that kind of a trauma-informed care. And also there is access to emergency support by having a guardian readily reachable. It's also important that there can be some shadow person or guardian ready to hold the space for the child or the children in the on-site. No? The next is reflection. These are moments of pauses and check-in. Maganda rin yan, no? Yung like right now because we're pressed for time. No? But reflection is really having a pause and a check-in. Where are we now? No? Are we on the same page? Are we understanding each other? So it's similar to therapy situation wherein statements such as want to take a moment and sense what it means to you with what we just talked about, or maybe you want to take a moment to just sense the image, either the whole of the image or parts of the image, and maybe just see what comes. No? So those are part of the reflection. That is also actually a focusing attitude. So as therapists, we also provide some reflections that we validate with the client. So I understand that this is what you said in this sense, whether it's validated by the client. Of course, no clinical sensitivity. It's crucial to know that it's crucial that we know the psychological state, the developmental level of the child, the condition, especially if there are severe psychological or mental health conditions that we need to be informed about. No? Because this one informs the direction of our session, the conversation and the activities. For highly disturbed clients with perceptual disturbances, heightened emotional dysregulation, we provide exercises that will allow them to feel safe and calm. So talagang unang-una, safety comes first. And it comes with that clinical sensitivity, when to pause, when to stop, and when to move forward, and what will be the sequence of the sessions based on how we are attuning with our clients. So it's important that activities are really trauma-informed. And then finally, focusing attitude. So this is really an embodiment of the focusing-oriented expressive arts and the focusing-oriented psychotherapy. This is an attitude of mindful awareness of feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. Ano siya somatic din siya. Having a focusing attitude allows the therapist and the client become attuned to how they are at the moment and how are they impacted by the ongoing activities or conversation in the session. So really focusing on the lens, no? Zooming into some key concepts, no? And processes here. So when you say focusing, as we mentioned earlier, it's having a mindful awareness to what is happening internally and also offering a friendly or welcoming attitude to whatever is in there. So some general statements there would be take a moment, see if you are comfortable to ask, or see if you have your body's permission to ask, how am I on the inside right now? Without getting attached to anything, and see if it's safe. And see what maybe words or images or even movement or sensation that are coming. And maybe these can act as handle to what's there. And if you can be curious or welcoming to that part. So yun no, yung talagang, okay, pakiramdaman natin kung ano ba yung nandyan. So for children, it also helps them, no? Especially if there are symptoms of dissociation, you actually invite them to come back into their body. Kasi nga, di ba, minsan the dissociation is so intense that they actually go out of their body. So the focusing allow them some grounding and some focus in the present moment. Another key concept there is the felt sense, or roughly in Filipino, the pakiramdam damdam, no? In focusing, this is what comes. Ano ba yung pakiramdam dyan? When you focus, something's coming. Not necessarily very clear, but something is there. And that there's a sense of connectedness to the bodily experience. So anong pakiramdam? Saan mo nararamdaman sa katawan? Minsan ang sagot, no? Mabigat sa balikat, medyo magulo or foggy yung iniisip, or mabilis yung tibok ng puso. So the psychological state is actually connected to the somatic experience. And that's also what we look at in the focusing-oriented expressive arts process. Okay, so another process is clearing a space, no? A process of putting an issue or a feeling or something that gets in the way to be present or to be in an all fine place. You know, di ba, minsan ang dami-dami nating iniisip or we barely are in the present moment. So clearing a space allow us to clear the fog, the cobwebs, and just stay in the present moment. And at the same time, maybe we can allow ourselves to access a peaceful and fine place. No? Yung parang remembering how it is to be okay, remembering how it is to be well. So as we clear the space, we actually pave the way to going into that sensation or experience of fineness or of being well. So yung mga iba sa mga from the clients, no, yung mga images na lumabas yung parang nagtatanggal ng parang nag-exfoliate, no, tinatanggal sa balat, winawalis, lumilinaw yung sky, no. These are some of the images that come out, no, in the clearing of the space. Of course, the idea there is that being able to allow the child to regulate the emotions first before working on an issue. Because if it's too close an emotion and if it's too much, it will not really work. So there has to be some way of clearing a space before we pick out an issue that we will work on. So whether it's an issue about the abuse that happened or even just the inability to calm down. So these are the things that we can choose, no, when we clear the space. And now we use arts as handle to express this issue and work through it. So in the model of the foot, no, we have the felt sense externalized into or actually sense as image, words, phrase, gesture, or sound, and then externalized into art's form. Mainly through visual images, but it can also be in the form of music, poetry, movement, among others. But there's that overarching, focusing attitude all the time. And then as expressed, now in the arts, we do listening, reflection, asking what it needs, receiving what it means, and processing the art and the meaning. So it's an ongoing processing there. And these are all done in a focusing attitude and in a non-linear processes. So one way is to ask, what does this art mean? Maybe you can focus on certain aspects of it or the whole of it. Maybe we can ask what it needs, among others. Sabi mabilis ngayon, no? But in the actual therapy session, it really takes time. It takes a while to do the processing with the client or with the child. And if it's by group, no, the pacing is actually very varied. Okay. And then there's this felt shift or a change in sensation or bodily experience. Ito yung indicators natin of the change process. No? It can be a subtle shift in the body that is also connected to a possible change in the trauma narrative. No? So maybe some indicators that I would always hear from the clients, no, yung gumaan na yung pakiramdam, kumalma na, luminaw na, o mas tumibay na ako. No? So actually, you can sense that in the body as well, that change narrative. And then at the end of the session, we usually end with a carrying forward. What is carried forward, maybe in the form of an image, word, movement, gesture, or sound. And ask, no, what small step in the right direction? Sometimes wala, sometimes it's just being in the present moment and that's what's being carried forward. But this allows also a movement, diba? A continuing movement towards a more positive change. Of course, it's an entire model, no, but some of the theme-directed approaches that we use that can be helpful, especially if it's by group, no, and it's safer to use, especially when it's directive and structured. So we have peaceful place, clearing a space, focus and check-in, and source of strength, inner advisor, and self-care. But for today, I'd like us to sense a bit how are we right now, no? So I don't want to be just chatting so much. I know I have a few minutes, but maybe I can have a few more. And maybe we can sense our breath in our body. And I'd like to invite you this one, maybe as a homework later on, no? To bring into awareness your source of strength and support. Maybe something in your life that brings that quality of support or strength. It can be the person in your life who maybe living or has passed on, a spiritual being, something that is very helpful for you, the arts, the pet. And sense how it feels inside the body. And see if there's a word, a phrase, an image, a sound, or even a gesture that resonate with that sense of support, source of strength for you. So maybe for some seconds, sense it in your body and invite it to be with you. And maybe just sense some gentle breaths or maybe longer, deeper breaths down into your. If you did this source of strength, just allow yourself to stay with that, and yeah, and maybe have it as a background and transition back there later on. Anyway, so some considerations for setting up arts-based telepsychotherapy. Very, very quickly, no, competent and ethical practice, being mindful of the psychological condition and developmental level of the child and children. So we know what appropriate activities and directions of the session should be. Of course, safety, security, and privacy of the space. Availability of guardian and having alternative communication platforms. So kung kanina biglang nawala yung Zoom, it's we have to have a different communication platform for ready access, no? To be sure that we hold the space, we hold an enough space for our clients. It is also helpful if there's an on-site shadow facilitator, especially for groups, ideally with background in psychosocial support. And then, of course, adequate device and connectivity, the use of computer or laptop, add-on microphone or speaker for groups para they have enough distance, that they don't have to come too close to you in the monitor, no, for them to hear you. So there's the need for that microphone and speaker. And then access and comfort to materials for multimodal arts, no? So yung familiarity rin with the use of the materials, so giving them some warm up in the use of maybe the colors, the clay, etc., found objects in the house, the writing, even the musical instruments and movement. Access to use of online materials, but not too much of them, because we have the virtual space. We can use YouTube, Spotify, just to add some dynamics into the session. And of course, clear guide on the use of the tele platform, no, like the Zoom, etc. And proper orientation about the tele session, informed consent, what to expect, some guidelines, and some limitations of the platform. And finally, enough space to create and to move, no? So if you can simulate conducive physical spaces for individuals and group session, like the tables, chairs with enough distance for art making and movement. So let me end with this now. We can pause a while and sense our breath and take a moment and sense on the inside what you'd like to carry forward from this presentation. See if there's a word, phrase, image, sound, sensation, or movement. Taking that gentle, longer, maybe deeper breaths down into our body and releasing.
Okay, thank you once again, Dr. Grace Brillantes. Let's move on to our board certified music therapist. I would like to introduce to you to Mr. Irvin Sayo Kalugdan, MMT, MTBZ, music therapist and owner of the Creative Arts Therapy Studio, LLC. He specializes in music therapy and music education with subspecialty in adolescent mental health. He's a board-certified music therapist and a licensed music educator. He has received numerous awards such as the Apple Impact Aid Grant and Teacher Researcher by the Apple Federal Credit Union in 2016, Fender Music Foundation Award by the Fender Music Foundation in 2014, and the Grammy Signature School Enterprise Award by the Washington, D.C. Grammy chapter of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences in 2014. He is also a member of the American Music Therapy Association. He has been with us in 2016, Akoparasabata. We would like to welcome you again together with his um, colleague. Okay, joining him would be Miss Danielle. Hello, Miss Danielle Elise Vista Zamar Alcantara. She's a registered nurse, MT, BC. She is an assistant professor at the Silliman University. Aside from being a board-certified music therapist, she is also a licensed nurse. Ito ngayon, I've been reading about this a while ago. She was an honoree in the who's who among students in American universities and colleges. In 2014, she is also a member of the Philippine Nurses Association, PNA, the World Federation for Music Therapy, or WFMT, and the Certification Board for Music Therapies, CBMT USA. So, hindi na po natin patatagalin. Let us welcome Mr. Kalugdan and Miss Zamar Alcantara.
Hi, my name is Irv Klugden, and I am here to share some of my insights on how I use music in my program during the pandemic and possibly give you some ideas on how you can implement them into your practice. I'm also happy to be virtually co-presenting with my dear friend and colleague from Dumaguete, Professora Zamar Alcantara of Silliman University. Let's start off with a light humming of the song Lean on Me by Bill Withers. When singing, the controlled breathing activates our parasympathetic nervous system to aid in relaxation. Adding a familiar tune adds predictability, and a positive message sets the tone of an environment focused on wellness. As I play the first few ascending notes, take a full, nice deep breath, and then sing or hum along as the melody progresses, and take breaths as needed. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road, I'll share your load. If you just call me, you just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, whoa, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Thank you for participating in that grounding activity. Hopefully you were able to hum, sing, or maybe even move along to the music. Lean on Me is one of our favorite songs at my job because of the message, and it's relatively easy for my students to learn. With all of the many obvious and necessary tools that we use during trauma and times of crisis, why use music? From 9/11 attacks and now the COVID-19 pandemic, research has shown that music therapy can play an effective role by providing a second wave of relief. It aids in developing coping strategies, helps processing feelings of anxiety and helplessness, supports feelings of self-confidence and security, provides a safe and neutral environment for relaxation even outside of traditional therapeutic settings. Music therapy provides sensory stimulation, provokes responses of familiarity, predictability, and feelings of security by association. Even frontline workers and first responders' feedback demonstrates music therapy's ability to develop a stronger sense of readiness to cope with day-to-day stressors and potential future crises. Music therapy has been shown to have a significant effect on individuals' relaxation, respiration rate, self-reported pain reduction, and behaviorally observed self-reported anxiety levels. A coordinated program of music and music therapy interventions in response to crisis or trauma, designed and implemented by a qualified music therapist, provides opportunities for nonverbal outlets for emotions associated with traumatic experiences, anxiety and stress reduction, positive changes in mood and emotional states, active and positive participation and involvement in treatment, enhanced feelings of control, confidence, and empowerment, and positive physiological changes such as lower blood pressure, reduced heart rate, and relaxed muscle tension. In addition, music therapy allows for emotional intimacy with peers, families, and caregivers, relaxation for family groups or other community and peer groups, and meaningful time spent together in a positive, creative way. While there are several studies on this topic, we are only scratching the surface of how music can be an effective mental health resource in preventative and restorative trauma care. So what is music therapy? The World Federation of Music Therapy defines it as the professional use of music and its elements as an intervention in medical, educational, and everyday environments with individuals, groups, families, or communities who seek to optimize their quality of life and improve their physical, social, communicative, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual health and well-being. Research, practice, education, and clinical training in music therapy are based on professional standards according to cultural, social, and political contexts. To help further discussion on music therapy and its development in the Philippines, I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, Mrs. Danny Zamar Alcantara from Silliman University.
Music therapy is a growing profession. It's not very known here in the Philippines. There are only 2 schools in the country that offer it as a course or as a major. We have St. Paul Manila and Silliman University. We believe that more research needs to be done on this. I did a thesis called Knowledge of and Need for Music Therapy, Perspectives of Health Professionals and Special Educators here in Dumaguete City. I know there are students at St. Paul Manila who have done research on music therapy here in the Philippines, but there's really not much of it. So maybe some of you might be open to do a collaboration to do research. My students and I would be very willing to jump in. Music is such a powerful tool, especially in healing. And we are very privileged here in the Philippines to have songs that can be used for music therapy interventions and artists who are also very willing to advocate for it as well. So songs from artists like Eraserheads, Ben and Ben, Moira, De La Torre can be used to help your clients through interventions like singing, instrument playing, lyric analysis, and songwriting.
When thinking about adding music to your toolbox, consider the role music could play in the grounding, affirming, processing, regulating, and the closing of your treatment plans. We should mention that there can be certain musical experiences that could potentially trigger negative reactions or even re-traumatize our clients. A client once approached me about my use of Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror in a lyric analysis activity and their feelings about his child assault cases. Through the therapeutic rapport, we established the need to avoid using Michael Jackson in their group sessions so as to not trigger their own childhood assault-related trauma. In another instance, a nursing colleague of mine was leading a reminiscing group in a dementia unit during my 4th year rotations in college. We had an elderly client that reacted negatively to another client that requested to play Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog. I stepped in to help guide the discussion while validating the triggered client's feelings. Her reaction was due to experiencing an abrupt loss of control over her family during Elvis's rise to popularity in the mid-1950s. After a few minutes of group processing, we were able to agree on using a cover artist's version of Can't Help Falling in Love instead. When clients were able to explain their perspective to the group or the facilitator, a greater sense of understanding, support, collaboration, mutuality, and empowerment can be established for everyone involved. Due to the potential for re-traumatizing our clients within treatment, we must be vigilant with the 6 trauma-informed principles as outlined by SAMHSA. Getting into the toolbox, we could look at the grounding musical activities. For example, when we sang and hummed the familiar tune, Lean on Me. You could also sing a welcome theme song that you could pick or even write together with your clients. You could also play a simple rhythmic game that uses everyone's name in the group, and the rhythms could be based off of the syllables of their names. At the beginning of the session, we started with a humming and singing of Lean on Me. I should note that when facilitating sing or play along activities via video chat, there is usually a noticeable delay in the audio. So I will usually turn off my speakers or turn down my headphones so I can stay on track with my own tempo. The participants will hear my tempo and follow along on their end. This is especially important to manage and educate clients when accompanying and making music with each other via video conferencing. Asking a client what kind of music they like can be one simple way of affirming their ability to choose or express their individuality. Getting them to draw what you hear can be a visually affirming experience as well, because there is no wrong answer. A fan favorite affirming activity is the soundtrack of your life. Empowering the clients to share and openly hear each other's song choices and reasons can be a validating experience. In this prompt, we are focusing on positive messages that focus on their strengths, which we will then use to inform the direction of the session and ultimately use to close the session. Did you know that trauma and stress can actually affect our vocal range? There are several studies that have been done on this topic, and I have found that while most clients prefer to sing songs in the same key and tempo of the original performing artist, some do want to find a key that fits better in their voice. In addition, finding an appropriate key and tempo for the client can also increase their sense of confidence and accomplishment when singing along. The Transpose Chrome extension can change the key of a song to better fit a client's vocal range, fine-tune the pitch if your client's playing on a piano that's slightly out of pitch, or even slow the tempo down to allow for more expressiveness when improvising or learning a difficult musical passage. It's not perfect, but when paired with the right YouTube video, I've used it with great success during the pandemic, both in sessions as well as for clients to practice on their own. The beloved song With a Smile by the Eraserheads became an anthem during the COVID pandemic. As a matter of fact, several 90s female OPM artists collaborated on a video to help raise funds for musicians affected by the lack of available work during the pandemic. Let's all sing along with Danny's akoparasabata version of Eraserheads With a Smile.
Lift your head, baby, don't be scared of the things that could go wrong along the way. Get by with a smile. You can win at everything, but you can try. Baby, you don't have to worry, 'cause there ain't no need to hurry. No one ever said that there's an easy way. And they're closing all their doors, and they don't want you anymore. This sounds funny, but I'll say it anyway. Oh, I'll stay. times. Even if I have to fetch you every day, I'll get by if you smile. You can never be too happy in this life. In a world where everybody hates a happy ending story, it's a wonder love can make this world go round. Don't let it bring you down, turn your face into a frown. You get along with a little prayer and a song. Let me hear you sing it.
When processing any difficult topics, adjust your interventions according to the emotional distance and readiness of your client. It's important to have a safe transition out of a processing activity when we see our clients are not ready to face their trauma head on. Be sensitive to available time, resources, and the history of your client before engaging in something that might re-traumatize your client. In this lyric analysis activity, the prompt focuses on the word encouraging. We might need to define the word in various contexts and even help provide examples of songs as a springboard. Some clients will already have a playlist on their phones that is connected to the theme. Here are some of the examples of songs, artists, and client responses from my adolescent psych population. They identify with the need to show the importance of being who you are and expressing yourself without regret. Help them say that they're still looking up even with all this negativity around them. And remind themselves that they are one of a kind and they are worth all that goes into being who they are. You can see that they're pretty much all on theme, even though the song choices are from different genres, ranging from pop, R&B, hip-hop, rap, and acoustic singer-songwriters. I typically collaborate with my art therapy colleague and turn important messages like this into visual art pieces like this. I like to have them also incorporate a part of themselves in the picture because it makes it more authentic and unique. They get to control all of the elements of the project, including which parts of them they want to have in there, to tell the story of why they chose the song through images instead of just words. This student added the knee brace in their image. They can get as creative as they want to be and hopefully make something that expresses themselves in a way that elevates their sense of self-efficacy and self-worth. Sometimes you'll get lyrics that might throw a red flag, so it's important to make time to check in and make sure that they're okay. Music alone will not be enough for our clients to feel well. We still have to guide and empower them to make healthy choices, especially when they leave our space. The first few pictures were pre-pandemic in my classroom, but this picture was during the pandemic, and you can see them using their laptop and BandLab, which is an app I'll talk about later, to create musical expression. When storytelling through music, you could put a collection of instruments in front of your client. Direct those clients to choose instruments that represent characters in a story and then place or play the instruments according to their relationships with each other. If you are gathering assessment data in this way, be aware of maladaptive behaviors that might manifest themselves during the experience. As usual, interventions should always be designed in a way that protects the client from becoming re-traumatized. And if you are working in a virtual environment, you could potentially use Chrome Music Lab in this way. Rewriting lyrics to a well-known song is a great way to introduce songwriting to your clients. The music therapy students of Silman University rewrote the lyrics to Laron Laron Sinta and added the theme of hope and prosperity using Bisaya and Tagalog, while accompanying themselves on the bandurria and guitar. Under the College of Performing and Visual Arts, Professora Zamar Alcantara and the students of Silman University's Music Therapy Department joined the World Federation of Music Therapy in celebrating World Music Therapy Day on March 1st. through their virtual performance, as well as becoming a member of the Federation. Navigating emotional regulation and dysregulation are important goals for our clients as they undergo treatment, and music can be an effective tool. Many of us use music already in playlists to prepare us for the day, getting psyched for a gym workout, and even facilitate moments of stillness and relaxation. Sometimes we sing, dance, or even play music to help us reset and move on with the rest of our day. But what do you do if your client doesn't have instruments at home? If you're in a virtual setting, then most likely they have a computer, tablet, or smartphone that you are using to video conference with. Here's an app I used heavily during the pandemic and am now continuing to use even with my in-person clients. BandLab is a free website and mobile app that synthesizes a digital audio workstation in which you can record, produce, master, collaborate, and share music in an online community. We used this website practically every day during the pandemic since many of my students didn't have access to musical instruments. Since I used it in a classroom setting, I had to make sure that the site was COPPA compliant, and I used it with the education version. However, some of my students have gone on to create their own personal accounts and are still enjoying BandLab experiences in a safe, protected way. In another art and music collaboration project, I combined my students' virtual music experience on BandLab or similar apps with a visual video production experience. We started with an introductory lesson to make a 30-second beat and then progressed to a minute. Here are two examples of how this project looked after their 60-second beat was created. I asked the students, "Where is your happy place?" and used the 5 senses to describe it. Their task was to then interpret those 5 senses into music and create visuals, either original or found pictures. Then I showed them how to combine those files on the MusicVid website and create a 60-second reactive music visualizer. This student identified with playing her ukulele while looking outside her window and listening to the rain. She said the rain reminded her of many things, ranging from tears when she is sad and or overwhelmed about the complications surrounding the many surgeries needed to restructure the bones in her feet from a rare genetic deformation, to the joyful sound of applause when she used to dance and perform in her early childhood. She explained that the music she created makes her feel hopeful, calm, and reassured that everything is going to be okay. This student created a beat and video to commemorate his late pet cockatoo. He never really processed the loss of his beloved pet because he was very young when she passed. He took this opportunity to remember how much joy she gave him and said he might get another one when he's older and has a job that can sustain him and a pet. For this video, he used a different app on his iPhone called Melody. He was already familiar with it and incorporated the MP3 into the MusicVid website and a Google image similar to his pet. And when it's time to close out the session, the day, an event, or even a tumultuous year, why not do it with a song? Even though most of us were spent at the end of the academic year, asking my colleagues to participate in a group music activity was actually more fun than many of them thought it would be at first. Lean on Me was my first attempt at doing a music video collage, and it was not easy for someone that has never done it before. The video became the finale of our concert and led into the post-show glow event where we reminisced about the past several months, dedicated songs to each other, and shared fun and memorable moments. We hosted 3 virtual music and art showcases in this manner, with a live audience made up of current students, faculty, families, and even former staff and alumni. We basically put all the files into a slideshow, presented them over a video conference, and left an active chat room available for people to clap and cheer through emojis and words of encouragement. In addition to our virtual shows, we hosted our annual 5K fundraiser in a virtual format, using Survivor's Eye of the Tiger to kick off our virtual starting line event on Facebook Live.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm.
This particular song was very poignant too because it was shortly after Bill Withers' passing. The next song, and I'll just play a short snippet of it so you can see the video as well, but this was Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, and it was performed by a variety of musicians, not just faculty, but we even had some community members that are musicians that just wanted to get out and play as well. While it's better for your personal well-being and faster, outsourcing a video project like this is expensive. There are tons of online tutorials and social media forums to help content creators of all levels. Here are the free or freemium video production software titles that I have used over the years with varying levels of success. I found that DaVinci Resolve by Blackmagic Designs was by far my favorite. Here are some helpful resources that could help supplement the amazing work from our research community. For more information on music therapy, visit the World Federation of Music Therapy website, our Certification Board for Music Therapists, and the American Music Therapy Association. If you'd like to reach out and chat more about any of these other topics, here is our contact information. Please remember, Silliman University is ready and available to participate in research studies. To wrap up our session, I'd like to play this amazing video of the Filipino musicians that participated in the rewritten and rearranged 2019 Southeast Asian Games anthem. They hope the song We Heal as One will help unite the Philippines in the fight against COVID-19. Danny and I thank you for attending our webinar, and thank you to akoparasabata for inviting us back to participate in this important event. Be well, be safe. Remember to take care of yourself so you can better take care of others. Ingat.
Handog namin itong kantang to para sa lahat ng Pilipino. Tayo na po't magkaisa at magtulungan para malagpasan po natin ang pagsubok na ito. Stay home. Tara, sabay-sabay nating awitin.
Sawari mo'y nag-iisa.
Lahat kanya-kanya,
Ngunit di man nagsasama.
kaya pang magkaisa.
Isa sa pag-iingat.
Isa sa ating dasal, laging nagpapatunay
Na tayo'y makatao pa.
Together we are being called to make a future world. The test we face is for us to prove that we can heal as one. We heal as one with kindness. We heal as one. We serve, we share, we show compassion. We heal as one.
Sawari mo'y nag-iisa. But when we heal as one. Isa sa pag-iingat. Isa sa ating dasal. Lahing nagpapatunay na tayo'y makatao pa.
Together we are being called to make a future world.
Test we face is for us to prove
That we can heal as one.
is when we heal as one.
We heal as one with kindness. We heal as one. We serve, we share, we show compassion.
you very much, Mr. Kalugdan and Miss Samar Alcantara. That's very, ang galing, no? Yun lang ang sasabi ko. No? But anyway, let me introduce to you our youth reactor for this webinar. Thank you very much to his parents and the Philippine Science High School. Our youth representative is Jose Rafael Escarial. Let us hear from him regarding his insights and reactions to the presentations. Go, Rafael.
Hello, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. So, in order to begin, I'd like to first say thank you to the Child Protection Network and UNICEF for organizing this webinar series. This is very important in spreading awareness regarding breaking barriers and bridging gaps regarding mental health, especially in regards to children here in the Philippines and around the world, especially as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. So, to introduce a little bit of myself, I'm currently a 12th grader at the Philippine Science High School main campus, and I'm currently the president of the student council in the school. So personally, for this webinar, I was actually able to personally relate to the therapy and to the therapy methods and the therapy applications as I have had experiences with undergoing therapy and and also being a musician. I have also experienced how music has aided in my expression. So in particular, as a musician, as I perform and write music, I was able to relate very well with the music therapy and as well as the art therapy. Although I'm not that much of an artist myself, so since it is through this pandemic na I was able to realize even more that we children and even adults, we have different communication abilities and or disabilities and difficulties, especially when we're trying to process an experience that may have been traumatic. And during the experience itself, there may have been certain communication abilities that were hampered, and thus it is really important that we have various methods of therapy and not necessarily restricted to a verbal method. So this is why music and art therapy are very vital, especially to the youth, since a lot of the youth are inclined to creative expression, and thus it is important that these options should be more open, especially to the youth. It is I do hope that there will be more professionals who will be able to conduct these to the youth, since due to a growing amount of youth who need to express and let out their experiences, then these will be important now more than ever. So it is important that this trauma-informed therapy, whether in traditional or more creative forms, is promoted through all levels of the education system, not only in the teaching levels, but also in our education system, as mentioned, that it's important to learn basic psychological methods like psychological first aid, which is very important to spread in our schools. So, as student and a student leader in Philippine Science High School, which is one of the most rigid education systems in the country, my mental health experiences are definitely informed and influenced by my experience as a student. And being a student leader, we have been working a lot with a lot of student experiences who have had problems both within their school and within their family, which may be outside of the school, which we are not able to fully address to because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, and major reasons that we have to address in our work as student leaders and coordinating with their school is is that is that our academic workload and our lessons, they're actually a very major reason, and they're actually a very major factor in the mental health difficulties of students, since having a lot of workload assignments, or even having triggering topics that may lead students to have difficult times in understanding topics, finishing assignments, and this may affect their overall well-being as people. Thus, it is important that while we promote therapy in order for students and faculty and staff alike to process and address their experiences, it's also important that we address the underlying issues in our education system, such as the difficult requirements and and maybe triggering topics. Because although resilience is important in order that we may bounce back and be able to study well, it will not be enough if we bounce back to the same system that will still give us a lot of requirements, or that will not be friendly to the student experience. So it's important that in all levels and in all steps, the education system is an important factor. Not only do we have to make our therapy and other psychological aid available to students, we have to be able to address the reasons as well as to why students have been having psychological difficulties and in mental health. So I look forward to therapists, professionals, schools, students, and families to be active listeners to each other's issues and to each other's trauma. As 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 you mentioned, since as being a child, growing up a child, it takes a village to raise a child. Thus, we need to be able to we need to be able to address the children's issues as a community. So we need to be able to listen to each other and build up from their experiences, their emotions, in order that we may process both our individual and systemic issues, in order that we may have children to grow up to be more well-rounded individuals, not only as students, not only as workers, but also as good family members and friends, and you know and good members of society. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rafael. So he is from the Philippine Science High School main campus. So again, we would like to thank your parents for allowing us to be graced by your presence. So thank you very much. So that's the insight from our youth reactor. Now for the open forum, I would like to share this Zoom space with my colleague. He is also a psychologist at the Child Protection Unit, Philippine General Hospital. He specializes in psychology with subspecialty in clinical psychology, a diplomate, American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress, an associate of the Psychological Association of the Philippines, and a member, National Center for Crisis Management International. I present to you my colleague, Jason Ray M. Berlaan, MA, RSI, DAETS. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you for that, Ms. Fritz. May I call on our resource persons to join me in this Zoom space? Dr. Grace, Sir Irvin, and Miss Danny. Hello, thank you again. And Doc Nori. Okay, perhaps this is for Dr. Grace, Sir Irvin, and Miss Danny. How do you manage those blind individuals who need psychotherapy by using telepsychotherapy?
Jason, let me answer a bit. Actually, I haven't had a blind client, so I really can't answer. Sorry. But I can have some insights. But maybe Sir Irvin, Ms. Danny would have a more experiential answer there, coming from their experiences.
Yeah, so
I have worked with some students, some clients that are visually impaired, and some of which are, not 100%. So maybe they're like missing some peripheral vision in one eye, or loss of vision in in just one eye, and a minimized view on the other. But most of them are using assisted technology to access the computer, and so they can use like voice activated commands for their device. A lot of iPads do have the assistive access, where they can, just with a touch of a finger, activate and turn on the iPad, and it goes directly to a particular app that will allow them to, interact with, with the device. And in terms of music, and persons that are visually impaired or blind, I mean, they can definitely sing, and hear, what's happening. And then, in a virtual environment, they're listening to us through a tiny little speaker. So usually I prefer when they're on headphones, or if they can be, if they can connect their device to a Bluetooth speaker, or something that has a little bit more, full range, so they can feel, the sound a little bit more, as opposed to just hearing it from a tiny little speaker. So sometimes, if necessary, I'll even send, like a $30 or $40 pair of headphones that are over the ear headphones to my clients. As a matter of fact, that 5K that we did, we also used the money from that 5K to purchase Bluetooth headphones that we would then, I just basically went and hand delivered, a bunch of headphones to some of our clients that were a little bit more impacted by their disabilities, and really could benefit from having, that tactile sensory response to the sessions, as opposed to just hearing it on a tiny little speaker. So hope that helps answer your question, maybe.
Yes, I think you answered the question, sir. How about the others? Do you have an idea or thought in mind? Or we go to the next question. Anyone in the panel? What specific non-verbal cues, and how often do you check for them? Do you have any effective strategies to make sure that you constantly check for cues in children across all ages?
Yeah, it's part of the therapy. Is really to look into all the possible cues. No? It's quite more challenging in the virtual space, but what I mentioned earlier really is to have that kind of a sensitivity. Whatever gestures or nonverbal, even the tone of the voice, the slouching, or even the movement of the body can really say a lot on what's really happening internally. The child may be saying something, but the nonverbal cues may be saying something else. And all of these are factored in as we move along the session in terms of therapeutic direction. Even for example, the child would say, okay po, but the reaction is really not. So you have to have that sensitivity to, is this something that is helpful for the child? Maybe not. So that kind of like a sensing, it's very, very important in focusing oriented approach, that sensing of where the client is, both verbally, non-verbally.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I did put a response to that question in the chat, but definitely looking at, the more concerning behaviors, like when they isolate or withdraw, they're task avoidant, and of course, if they're doing like self-harm, behaviors, those are things that you have to report on. And so your vigilance with that is extremely important. We're obligated reporters, so we have to, notate, take data, and send that information on to, the police or whoever it is that would be, acting on making sure that they're okay. Sometimes if you check in too much, it can be bad for the therapeutic report. So as a matter of fact, just today I had a student,
who was withdrawn, like totally withdrawn, went to a practice room, huddled into a corner. And I just checked in with him, and I just, what do you need? How can I help? Where are you right now in your space? Was something that happened here at home? All those questions were just not helpful, And so ultimately, what was helpful was just me offering some potential solutions, from my perspective, from what I could observe, and just letting them know that I was there, that I care, and that I would, do whatever I needed to do to help make sure that they were okay. All while having zero response, no verbal response whatsoever, not even eye contact or anything. And then by the end of the session, which for me is about 90 minutes, the student came up and just thanked me for time, thanked me for space. And, he felt like he was ready to move on with the rest of the day. And, and that no reporting was necessary. Although I did report, obviously I had to report that, but but he assured me, we had like a verbal safety contract, basically. He was able to move on with the rest of his day. So.
Well said, sir. Thank you for that. Perhaps we still have one more question for everyone. May I ask everyone, our speakers, to please give us an idea on how we can foster or enhance resilience using the tools that you've discussed, the music and the art and other interventions as well.
Okay, so I will start. In general, of course, as I've said, I've talked about resilience. So I think as workers, social workers, a practical way of, as I've said, the number one is to have connections, because usually it's more difficult. I've seen a lot of people consulting because they're having a hard time during the quarantine, no? When you are separated from your loved ones, you can just see them through, when they give you food, etc. So I think it's important to have connections with your groups, regular kumustahan. We do it with some of my friends out of the blue, and then we schedule sessions. So I think that's one. And then, of course, taking care of yourself, and those are practical things. And probably do something meaningful every day. For me, if you sort of think of something to be grateful, or maybe you can appreciate what's outside. So just promise yourself that you do something that will create some kind of spark that will help you to feel good for the day. I think is very important, either with what was presented already, the music, arts, or you play with your family, or probably you do something that makes you feel good that you are accomplished, or you have done something for the day. It can be just 10 minutes of cleaning or 10 minutes of cooking, but as long as you're happy with that, I think that feeling can actually help you every day. And if you add those, you basically help you to be resilient with whatever problems that would come your way. Yun. So maybe the rest can be added, no? Kasi I might talk a lot and go on and on.
Thank you for that, Doc Nori.
Okay,
Thank you, Doc.
can I add to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Other than social support and connectedness, we have a term in music therapy called ISO principle, which means that we bring the client, we go to the client where their mood is, right? So music helps in elevating mood. So if your mood is really like you're on a downer mode, right? You set a Spotify playlist and then do a playlist that has like slower tempo, really mellow, up until a song that will really uplift you, right? So that's also a good option, and it's called an ISO principle playlist. So each of us are very individualized, right? We have different artist choices, we have different genre choices as well. So that can be used as a mood booster, and it can foster resilience as well.
So because it's still ladies first now, sabi ni Sir Irvin.
Yes, Doc Grace. Thank you for that, Doc Grace.
Yeah, I one is really I resonate with the collective nature of resilience, that it's not really just an individual struggle in terms of mental health and the difficulties, especially now what we're facing. Sabi nga kanina, no, it takes a village, and yes, no, it's a collective thing. It takes an entire society, and takes it's a team effort. So that kind of an assurance that the client is not alone, and that's also what we do in therapy, no, whether it's arts based or something else. No, the presence of the therapist, the facilitator, allow that kind of a joining with the client, where the client is, like what Miss Danielle said, no, the joining, the ISO, tama ba ako? Baka may masabi akong maling term.
ISO principle.
ISO principle is really just to be where the client is, not dismissing what's in there. In the an affirmation where the client is, but not really allowing a wallowing or a rumination to take longer. No? That there is that kind of a movement towards a more positive change. That's why in the creative process, no, we're allowed to imagine that imaginative faculty that is inherent within us. It's actually an agentic capacity to create something that is not there. So if you don't have hope, for instance, maybe you can access, well, can I remember a time and a place where I have that hope? And that imagination allows us to go into that space and time. Ganun kalaki, no? And then sinasabi nga ni Doc Norida, the brain can allow us to re-experience things in a positive way, no? The opposite of the trauma. And that also create a somatic experience in the here and now. So if I'm feeling down and I'm listened to, ito yung pinaka-importante na narinig ako. Kasi yung sinasabi ng clients, no, naririnig nga ba ako? Sinasabi niya laging solusyon, hindi niya pa nga ako naririnig. No? So the importance of listening, of being there and joining with the client, hoping that there is a positive movement in that kind of relationship in the therapeutic process, and using the imaginative, creative, and expressive faculty to create something that is hopeful. It's also very empowering, no? So kanina, halimbawa, na may drawing ako dun sa source of strength, kaya kanina yun din yung ginamit ko. No? So we can imagine our source of strength and support, and hopefully it perturbs us and create a sense of resilience within us. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc Grace. Very well said. Sir Irvin, thank you for staying with us.
Yes, absolutely. I loved what everyone was saying. It reminds me of that concept of growth through trauma. A lot of times when we're focusing on treating our clients and working with the individuals or the groups on just getting them to just be present in the here and now, we ultimately can get to a point where they do learn about the ways that they've grown and built themselves up during and amidst the trauma, and so that's a beautiful, if and when you do get to that place within the therapeutic environment, it really does lend itself to that idea of resiliency, and it's in a way that is very real for them. So they very concretely can say things like, yeah, like I really stepped up to the plate. I somehow managed to, take care of all of my entire family despite dealing with, XYZ, what I was experiencing, or I, didn't know I could do that, but because, now all of a sudden, because I was put in this horrible place, I realized that I'm much stronger than I really thought I was, so it's a painful road to get to that point for them, but but when they make that realization in that safe environment that you've created, it can be life-changing at that point. So but yeah, many of the arts, it's all much of what we do is repetition. We're rehearsing, we're practicing, we're creating, and then in that creative process, we're destroying and then rebuilding and then recreating and in that process, much like like the myelin sheathing on our neurons, it's like repetition builds resiliency within the nerves, and that's that whole like neuroplasticity concept. And so it's the same thing with our behaviors. Like we reinforce these behaviors to the point where we can believe in ourselves the next time we're in that type of situation, believe in our own strength of will or perseverance or determine whatever it is that will get you past that next hurdle, that next crisis. So and sometimes and I love the whole CBT concept, and it's something that we've been using a lot in music therapy, just using a particular lyric, and I'm sure a lot of us do this already, where we pick a particular lyric, and it becomes that theme that carries us through the day or carries us through whatever trauma it is that we're going through. I'm reminded of this one client who used this is this old 80s song. Gosh, can't remember it. But it was like, ain't nothing gonna hold me down. Oh no, I got to keep on moving. And man, this client somehow picked up this like television that was bolted to a wardrobe and ripped it right off of this wardrobe, and just believed in herself so much that she ripped off that TV. But then we used it later in a session, and we had a real good laugh at it because everyone was okay. She was okay after that. But and re-scripted that to be that, like, yeah, you are strong, stronger than maybe even realized. So when you leave this hospital, when you discharge, take that strength with you and move forward with your life. Don't let things hold you down, including yourself. Right. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you for that, sir. I think it's by the end of the day, we just have to be hopeful and trust our strengths and trust our capabilities, and always to be open, to be informed. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for
Jason,
the
sorry, just a thought came.
yes.
Sure. Thanks. So sorry. No. Just to add, no. That may be very important too is the increasing the capacity. Kathy Malkady, one of the pioneers in arts therapy, talked about increasing the circle of capacity. So it means that you also create the stimulus, the environment that allows the vitality in life. No? Para rin may mabagong narrative siya. No? It's not enough that you do therapy. No? Therapy is just a portion of it. No? But really engaging in more life-affirming activities can reinforce, like what Sir Irvin is saying, can reinforce the resiliency. So that kind of an exposure to more positive life engagements. So just a thought. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Dr. Ray. So thank you for the very informative and very insightful discussion. I think all of us here, our attendees, both in the Facebook and the Zoom, are very much thankful and very much appreciative of all of your discussions. Sabay-sabay po tayong sabihin na ako, tayo, para sa bata. See you again, everyone.